Today on episode number 84 of the podcast, we're discussing why being organized after sight loss can be so helpful and some tips on how to get there. What's up, VIPs? Welcome to Life After Sight Loss Radio, the podcast helping you discover life after sight loss. My name is Derek Daniel. I am your host and resident VIP, aka visually impaired person. And joining me as always is my co-host and resident sighted supporter, my lovely wife, April.
Hello, everyone.
So today we're talking about organization. I've been on a kick of organization as of late, which I'm sure we'll talk about as we get into the episode.
I'm sure we will.
But organization is so important after losing your sight. And I don't just mean organization like putting all your thoughts together. I mean the house and your office and the kitchen and all those different places. Being organized is so helpful, and we're going to jump into it today. Of course, we can't talk about every single thing in one podcast episode, so I've got some resources for you over in the show notes.
Yep, and you can find the show notes at lifeaftersightloss.com/084. Show notes include links, resources, ways to subscribe, and a lot more. So head on over to lifeaftersightloss.com/084.
That's right. Okay, so organization. Now, I've been on a kick of organization. I think it was maybe last year, I read a book called Getting Things Done by David Allen. If you want to know more about that, I'll put a link in the show notes for that. But this book was great and just really, I don't know, it really made me think about my organization and that sort of thing. And I do tend to get obsessed with things, so yes, I naturally got obsessed with that. But it was just this idea of capturing all your thoughts and, making sure that your brain isn't trying to remember everything, but have ideas as opposed to hold them. Well, that also means that my whole life needs to be organized and that sort of thing. So it's like, it's chaos happens, I do get sort of obsessed on things.
Yes, very much.
Yes, but we're not just talking about that kind of organization. We're talking about staying organized in general in your life. Because after losing your sight, there are a lot of different things that can take place. And because of sight loss, that means, wow, if I could just be more organized, this would be really, really helpful. So we're going to talk about some of those topics today, and we're going to jump into it. So any quick comment on before we jump into everything, dear?
Nope, I think I'm good.
All right, so the first thing I have down here is out of sight, out of mind. Now, I know that we can't use that excuse in our house. Like,
negative.
I don't get to say, well, I didn't see it, so it doesn't matter. No, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're blind or not here. You got to do what you're supposed to do. But it is true that if something's out of sight, it's out of mind. And so if you leave something somewhere, if you set it down somewhere, that can be a real issue. But if you have an organization, mindset to say, okay, I'm going to put this in the same place. Like, for example, on my nightstand, I have a little basket, and it holds my wallet, my keys, my AirPods, and all that sort of thing. So every night, it all goes in there, and I know exactly where it is. I'm not setting it on the end table somewhere or anything like that.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really important, to be out of sight, out of mind can really make you feel like, I don't know where anything is. But if you're organized, that can be really helpful.
And I want to say that this goes for sighted supporters as well, because we have so many things on our minds, trying to care for the VIP, and not that they need a lot of extra care, but just watching out and being mindful of things that they might need and whatnot. So we've got a little bit of extra things on our plate. So, always having the place where your keys go, or you always put the mail in a certain place, or you have even cabinets, having things organized in your cabinets and things like that. It just makes things go so much smoother.
Absolutely. And I think that's really the big point, is we want everybody to be able to work together, and we're going to talk about that here in just a few minutes, but we want everybody to work together to do this so that organization can, produce some of the things we're going to talk about, which the next thing I have written down here is gives a sense of structure in the midst of chaos.
Right.
Because when you lose your sight, it can really feel like your life is out of control and it's chaotic, and everything's coming at you and you're not really prepared for it. But when you have organization in place, then it can give you a sense of like, okay, there is some structure going on. This has a place to go in the cabinet. This has a place to go, on the nightstand. My phone is in an organized kind of manner.
Right.
Now, obviously, you can get a bit like OCD with it, but the idea of having that structure in place, and I think that goes for sighted supporter, depending on how you are. I think that can create a little bit of like de-stress in your life when it's somewhat organized.
Absolutely, because then you don't spend forever searching for something or trying to remember the list of things for you to do for the day. You write it down, I know we're going to talk about this later, but you write it down or you put it in an app or you have a list on a whiteboard or whatever the case might be. You have things that you can kind of check off and reminders, so you don't have to hold all of that stuff on your own and be solely responsible for it.
That's right. And the next thing is, I say, helps to keep track of physical and digital items. And I think right along with that, it's like, where's that thing? Or what happened to that one item or whatever? And it could go for just anything. I mean, think about being in the kitchen. Like, where are the bowls? Where are the plates? Where are the cups? We know where they are because they're always in the same place.
For the most part.
For the most part.
So recently I kind of moved some things around the kitchen and forgot to tell Derek about it. So he's like, well, where are the paper plates? So I moved them from the bottom shelf to the top shelf. Oops, sorry.
That's true.
It's nice to kind of go through your cabinets and reorganize, but make sure you let your VIP know that you've done those things.
I don't know how it works in everybody's life, but just as an example for us, when we moved into this house, and I think every house we've ever moved into, at least lately, what always happens is we'll move in and then the kitchen, the bathroom, the laundry room, places where there's cabinets and a lot of stuff goes.
Right.
It always happens, I say, put it all away and then tell me where it is.
Yeah.
Because, April's more of the organizational. If I move this here, I can put this here and get the most out of the space. And I'm just like, just put it somewhere and then let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Let's go through the pantry. Let's go through the kitchen cabinets and stuff like that. So that's how we've done it. Doesn't mean everybody has to do it. Maybe the visually impaired person is the more organized person.
Sure.
And they want to go through it. And that's perfectly fine. The key is there to just do it and then you can go through it.
And some people are different learners. They can't just remember it by being told. They have to do it themselves to then remember where things are. So being the one putting, the canned goods on a specific shelf in the pantry, then you remember more of where they are at that point too.
Well, yeah. And when you have sight loss, a lot of times you just, even if you're a visual person, which I am a visual person, which I always tell people and they laugh, but I am a visual person. But when you have sight loss, you just you try to learn or adapt differently. And so when I go to a kitchen cabinet, okay, tell me where this is. A lot of times I want to put my hands on it. I need to, the plates are, this far over from the door. I'm not actively thinking they're 12 inches from the door, but in my, spatial awareness, that's what's happening. I'm putting them, this is where it is, this is how far up it is, and that sort of thing.
Sure.
So we kind of have to touch it to help it make sense. The next thing I have, and this might sound a little odd, but it helps with purpose and with gaining momentum. Now, what I mean by this is sometimes we don't have a lot of victories, or at least we don't think we do. I know a couple of weeks ago we talked about exercising. We talked about getting the small victories, celebrating the small things.
Right.
And if we can get organized in our house, in our minds, in our digital spaces, that sort of thing, it can give us a little bit of momentum because when you lose your sight, it feels like, oh my gosh, I've totally lost everything. I'm not sure what I'm going to do.
Yes.
And it feels like a lot of loss, even on top of just the sight loss itself. It's losing, identity and purpose and things like that. So this can help you gain some of that. Okay, I'm not saying that organizing your kitchen is going to give you a great purpose, but it's going to give you this win of like every time I go back to the kitchen, I don't have to think where are the plates now. That right. isn't something that has to occupy my brain. So now I can focus on, okay, what am I going to do about sight loss? Let's say instead of thinking about where the cups are in the kitchen, you're learning voiceover on your iPad because that's something you have to do. The cups being where they are in the kitchen cabinet, they can stay there. And that, I know it's a small thing, but it can be a real victory when you're learning other things, especially adapting to sight loss.
I think so many normal daily activities that were easy and didn't even have to think about them before you lose your sight become tasks after you lose your sight. You have to figure out how to do it differently. You have to adapt to using your other senses that you have in addition to the sight that you do have residual sight left. And so then you're relearning those same tasks. And I can definitely understand how that would be very cumbersome. But being organized or trying to plan out how you're going to do something can take some of that stress out of that situation and can, make it a little bit more relieving, especially once you've accomplished what you're doing.
Oh, and especially at first, it's much more of I'd even go to a step farther and say it's like a project, having to figure out how to do something. There's multiple steps, multiple tasks in the project. And eventually you just learn how to do it and it becomes natural to you, But at first you almost have to go, okay, what's the first thing I need to do? Like if I'm going to make dinner, what's the first thing I need to do? Well, I've got to go search out where all the pans are and trying to put your hands on every pan and stuff like that. Again, if they're organized, that takes away some of that, initial
guesswork.
Guesswork. Yeah. So the pans are right there. That step's automatically done for you. Yeah. And so if you can just eliminate some of that, because you're going to have to figure out, is the chicken done? That's, or whatever. That's a whole nother thing, that being organized can be helpful, but at least the hard part of the project or the task is like, wow, I got to figure out if this is done, if this is not done, that sort of thing.
Right.
And then if stuff's already in place, you're really good to go. So I think all those things that we just talked about, there's so many benefits of organization. One good example is when we had kids. And, also the dog, I guess, could qualify, throw him in the mix.
Said he was like having a new baby.
Having a new baby, that's right. And so when I think about their rooms and I think about, the changing table and I think about their clothes, I think about the baby food, the bottle, all those, because lots of little details, lots of little items.
Right.
And we tried to always have them in the same spot. We tried to make sure the baby wipes were here, the diapers were here, so that, again, when I go in to change a diaper, because I had not changed a diaper, growing up, that was not something I really did. And so when I had kids, I was already visually impaired. So having a diaper in the right spot, having a baby wipe in the right spot, that takes away some of that guesswork. I can just reach for it, it's there, and then all the other stuff that I had to figure out, changing a diaper kind of goes right along with that. So we talked about some of these things, and coming up, I've got some tips, some tools, some things to practically apply this whole organizational, system in your life so that you can have a little bit less stress going forward. But first, we've got a quick message from our sponsor of today's podcast. Hey VIPs, if you're looking to get more organized, a tool that can really help you out is today's sponsor, which is Aira, the visual interpreter. Let's say you've got a big stack of mail and you're wondering, wow, how am I going to get through all of this? Well, Aira can totally help because they have trained agents who can see through the camera on your phone and they can walk you through all of that mail so that you can get more organized and make sure everything gets out when it needs to. So if you want to try Aira totally for free, you can download the app, you can register and use it totally for free. Just head to lifeaftersightloss.com/Aira. That's lifeaftersightloss.com/AIRA. You can try it totally for free, and it's going to be a great tool because everything they do is built and trained towards visually impaired people. So head on over to lifeaftersightloss.com/Aira and try it out today. All right, guys, so now we're going to talk about some tips and some tools, try to get a little bit practical when it comes to this whole organizational thing. Some of these, I at least hope most of these, are in place in our lives, so we've got firsthand, ideas of how to do it. So, first of all, dividers and containers in different areas, bathroom, kitchen, things like that. So, containers, obviously, I mentioned the one on my nightstand. Maybe think about having a junk drawer with all that stuff, just chaos in the drawer, right? And it's like, where is everything? It's papers and paper clips, who knows? If you can get some dividers, like, for example, a silverware, what is that thing? Like a tray that would go in there. You could use something like that to divide up where different items go. A container in your bathroom where it's like, okay, in here is, soaps and this item or whatever. But if you divide things up, it's going to help you keep track of it. Would that help you out as well, dear, even though you're sighted?
Yeah, I think anything that's going to make things easier to find is going to be helpful for anyone.
Absolutely. And again, it's that idea of instead of reaching into 5 different places to try to find something, you know exactly where it is and exactly where to find it. Go
scavenging through the drawer to try to find the one thing that you're looking for.
That's right.
We do have a junk drawer that is not organized. And I just like move everything around for, a minute or two before I find what I'm looking for. So,
well, and the thing about being visually impaired is you don't have that scannability anymore. If you're looking around something, yes, you might be moving something, but you're scanning.
I'm looking.
You're scanning the drawer. So you're imploring both those senses, if you will.
Sure.
So if you're visually impaired, it might be a little more difficult to do that. So make sure that you have, dividers and containers to split things up.
Yeah.
Secondly, work together to try to figure out where things will be. I mean, I know this sounds like a duh, and we've talked about this already, but work together as a family, as friends, whomever you're living with, if you're living with someone, work together. Like, for example, we mentioned the paper plates. She moved them to a different spot in the pantry and didn't mention it. Now, obviously, it's just one of those things, not that big a deal.
Not a big deal.
But work together, get the pantry going. Hey, let's have it here, and this would make more sense for me, or,
right.
Whatever the case is. Because
everybody has different thoughts on where things should go. Should the cups go by the sink? Should the plates go, wherever? You have different thoughts. So work together, figure out where it makes sense that they go. And then once you get them there, then, use your remaining vision and your tactile sense and all of that to find out, like Derek said, how close it is to the door, what shelf it's on, how high, how much you have to be on your tiptoes to reach it, whatever the case might be.
Yeah, and I think that there is certain understanding of why this makes sense to be here organizationally, and there might make sense why this needs to be here for visual reasons.
Right.
It's like I can reach it right here, and I'm not going to reach way in the back, because somebody who's sighted can just look in the back and find it, whereas somebody who has visual impairment, maybe they're not going to be able to look back there and find. I know, for example, we have a shelf in our pantry, and it holds spices and dressings and stuff like that. And I'm always like reaching back around things. I'm like, is the ranch back here? I don't know. It's like, where is it? I don't use that shelf a whole lot.
But I always put things in the same place, especially like ranch dressing. It's always on that shelf in one spot, yet he reaches around everything else.
Well, and that's the hard part, is that it's always in a very similar spot. It's not like I can reach in and go, ranch is right here. It's not always beside the olive oil or always beside this can of tuna or something like that.
We'll have that discussion later. It is actually. It's always in the exact same spot.
The exact same spot. Well, see, everybody learns something on the podcast, even the hosts.
The only time it isn't is if we don't have any.
Well, there you go. Maybe I'm reaching for things and it's not there, and I'm like, where is it? It's not here. And it's like, it's literally not there. Oh, that's helpful.
Yeah.
Work together to find ways to do things. Thirdly, use digital things to help you as well. Look, as a person who is visually impaired, my whole life really transferred to digital. I can't use paper and pen. I'd love to use a paper and pen. That'd be great, but I can't see what I'm writing. Even if I put it under a magnifier, I'm like, this looks like chicken scratch.
Can't read what you're writing.
My handwriting was never good,
right.
So it all goes digital. So find tools that help you. Tools like Google Calendar, things like Evernote and Trello, and reminders and notes and apps like that. Find a system that works best for you, because a lot of stuff's just going to be digital for us right now.
Yeah.
And that's perfectly acceptable. But find tools that work, because there's lots of them out there. You can try about 1,000 different ones, but whatever works best for you, use that and use it to its fullest potential.
Those type things are really nice because you can look days ahead, especially with calendars, and know what's coming up. You don't have to keep all of that stuff in your brain. You don't have to remember it. You don't have to write it down in a planner that is, not visually accessible. Things like reminders or lists or task lists or anything like that, you can check those things off. So I know Derek and I have been talking recently about how nice it is to be able to check things off and know that you're done with it as well. So not only can it keep you organized, it can also give you that sense of accomplishment and that you've made progress through the day or through the week, or, on a project that you have, if you plan out that, then it gives you that sense of accomplishment.
Absolutely. So the next thing is to keep tabletops and countertops as clean as possible. Now, the reason I say this is because from my personal experience, I'm only sharing from me, when there's lots of stuff on top of a counter or a table, it stresses me out, because most people can just scan the top of the table and see, oh, here's this item, here's this item, here's this item, here's this, where it's all just jumbled in my head, and then it gives me a bit of a headache. I'm like, oh, and I can't just reach out and grab one item. I'm going to knock it over. It's a whole thing.
Right.
So if you can keep that clear, that can help alleviate some of that stress. And again, all that stuff probably belongs somewhere, whether it's in the trash or in the sink or maybe on your bathroom countertop, maybe it belongs in a drawer or somewhere. Find a place where it goes. Now, that doesn't mean you can't have anything on a countertop ever. We have stuff on countertops, in the bathroom and the kitchen as well.
Yeah.
But there are simplistic, sort of minimal things, because that will honestly, if you're like me, it will help alleviate some of that stress. I know my wife's like, probably it doesn't matter near as much to her, but to me, it eliminates some stress.
I mean, a lot of clutter does irritate me, don't get me wrong, but when I have a pile of papers on the corner of the countertop that I know what they are and I know that they need to be, like something needs to be done with them, whether that is, a bill that needs to be paid or something that needs to be filed away. I know what needs to be done, but then I've put them there. So Derek doesn't necessarily know that those are the things that need to be done with those papers. So then I can see where that would cause some, a little bit of anxiety that they're always there.
Yeah, and it's just sitting there. It's like, what is this? Is this the same thing that was there 5 minutes ago? Is this new? And then if my water bottle is near it, I might knock that over. It's a whole thing. So yeah, find ways to keep the countertops and tabletops clear if at all possible. And finally, this is kind of a duh thing, I think, but mark similar things with labels. If you've got a can of soup and a can of beans and they're shaped the same and you can't see, what it says on there, that can be challenging because you getting ready to have soup and all of a sudden you've got a bowl full of beans. That's not good. So mark them with labels. Now you can do this a variety of ways. If you read Braille, you can mark them with Braille. Maybe you mark them with a note card, like a 3x5 note card, and you write on there what it is real big in Sharpie, and then put a rubber band, wrap it around there.
That's a good idea.
Maybe you could put some puff paint or bump dots, things like that. But puff paint is really good. It's probably cheaper and goes a little farther, but you can mark a can, things like that. Just mark things. I know spices can be in very similar shaped, whatever that thing is, containers.
Or even if you use a Sharpie, like you said, to do the note card, you could do that on the top of the can because they're usually a solid color, silver or something. So you could, get a very thick Sharpie depending on your site needs and, mark a B for beans or an S for soup or something of that nature as well.
Yeah. And that is, again, if you can work together, if you have somebody with you, work together on coming up with, hey, what label is going to be the best here? I know, for example, on our microwave, we have the bump dots.
Yep.
And we kind of talked about, we don't want to put 50 bump dots on the front of it. So what makes the most sense, not only to the visually impaired person, but what is not going to clutter the microwave or clutter the oven that we have it on as well. So find ways to mark and label things, especially if they're similar in shape and size. So we have talked a lot about this stuff today. We got a lot of tips and tools for you guys. And I've got a question for you. What is one thing you do to help you stay more organized? Do you like to label things? Do you have containers and dividers? What is something that helps you stay more organized? And just as a side note, has that helped you in alleviating some stress in your life when it comes to losing your sight? So, all that being said, that's a lot of information for today. Hopefully you stuck it all the way through. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. And of course, we have some housekeeping items. We want to remind you that if you don't want to miss an episode, you've got to subscribe to the podcast.
Yeah. So if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe. Now I can't talk. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and turn off notifications so you don't miss another episode.
That's right. And if you're listening to the audio version, you can subscribe in your favorite podcast catcher like Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, something like that. If you visit the show notes at lifeaftersightloss.com/084, you'll find buttons right under the audio player and you can subscribe, and that way you won't miss another single episode. By the way, if you have any thoughts, any questions, any comments, you can always reach out to us. Send me an email, Derek, D-E-R-E-K, at lifeaftersightloss.com. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram as well. All right, so, hun, I'm going to give you a final thought here. How can a sighted supporter help that VIP be more organized?
I think the best way is to talk to the VIP and find out how organized they want to be. How much anxiety or stress does this cause to not be organized? Because some people are just relaxed and laid back, and they don't need to be as organized as other people. I'm kind of more of a person that I like things in their place. I like to be able to, find something really quickly. But at the same time, I'm willing to search through the junk drawer every once in a while. It's not going to bother me. But if your VIP wants to have that more organization, then work together, talk together. We always talk about communication, and I think that's a big thing here, is just knowing how much organization they are wanting. And we're not just talking kitchen, bathroom stuff. We're talking office, workrooms, craft rooms, anything that they enjoy doing, their workspace at their job, anything that needs to be more organized so that they can be more efficient, so that they can have feelings of accomplishment and being productive and completing tasks, I think is the final thought I would share.
Absolutely. I think that's a really good point. Find out from the VIP how much organization they're looking for. And, if you're married, if you're family, if you're friends, you might know the person pretty well, but it's important to ask them because, like I said, the tabletop countertop thing for me is whatever, and you might not know that. And so it's important to ask. So great point, dear. Thank you for sharing that. All right, so today we've got our quote. Actually, we've got 2 quotes because I found them. I'm like, I like these. We're going to share them both. So, dear, why don't you give us the first quote?
Sure. The first one is, organizing is a journey, not a destination. And that is an anonymous quote.
That was interesting to me. Organizing is a journey, not a destination. We're not going to get there and now we're organized. Like we've achieved organization. It's like it's always kind of growing and changing, and maybe what works for you this year might not work for you next year. It might be a little bit different.
Or you might just find a new way to do it.
Absolutely. Maybe a new efficient way to do it. So you're always kind of growing and changing in organization. So it's definitely a journey, not a destination.
I feel like you could put life in the place of
absolutely.
Organizing because, our entire life is a journey. You don't get somewhere and then die. You're constantly evolving and changing. So, evolving your life with organization is definitely a journey.
Absolutely. And then the second quote we have for today.
You'll never get organized if you don't have a vision for your life. Linda Eubanks.
You'll never get organized if you don't have a vision. That's really interesting. And I didn't pick it because I had the word vision in it. I'm like, sometimes that's cheesy. But the idea of organization, you have to have a view of what you want. And I think, as you mentioned, talking to the VIP about what they're looking for and that sort of thing, you've got to have a view of what you want, how you want it to work, how do you want to be organized, how organized do you want to be, and what's going to make the most sense and all that sort of thing. So you have to have a vision. What is this going to look like, as I become more organized?
Yeah.
So I think that's a really crucial point. All right, guys. Well, we've talked a lot today, and there's been a lot of stuff shared. Don't forget to check out the resources in the show notes for more information on organization for both sighted supporters and visually impaired people as well. And finally, I just want to say thank you so much for watching and for listening wherever you are. And until next time, remember that sight loss isn't the end.
It's just the beginning.
My name is Derek.
And I'm April.
And we'll see you in the next one.